Welcome. Why do some parents start with purees? In previous generations, parents were advised to give babies as young as 3 weeks old rusk or cereal in their bottles. Official weaning to solids would often occur at 3 or 4 months of age. If you've watched episode 31, When to Wean onto Solid Foods, you'll note that in addition to being 6 months of age, there are several physical and physiological milestones that your baby needs to meet in order to be ready for solids. It is clear that a baby of 3 or 4 months has met none of these milestones. Historically, instead of concluding that these babies were simply not ready for solids, someone decided to turn solid foods into a liquid form so it could be fed to younger babies. Despite guidelines changing over 20 years ago, purees have become stuck in our cultural norms as a starting point for solids. And so, many parents now believe that they must first offer their 6-month-old babies purees before moving on to finger foods. The irony is that in the 1980s and 90s, parents who fed their 4-month-old babies purees had moved on to finger foods by the time those babies were 6 months old. So, when their babies were actually ready for solids, they moved on to what we would now think of as baby-led weaning. So, if we examine this logically, by skipping purees, all we are doing is removing the inappropriate feeding of young babies anything other than milk feeds, and then rejoining the weaning journey at 6 months with proper solids, just like the babies from the past. You are your baby's expert, and as such you must decide the right way to feed your baby. There are a couple of points that are worth considering if you choose to go down the pureed route. Homemade purees are nutritionally superior to processed ones. Industrial machines make purees that are smoother than the homemade versions. This has a few effects. The industrial breaking down of the food causes more of the carbohydrate content to become simple carbs or sugars. Industrial purees tend to have, on average, half the protein of equivalent homemade recipes. The very smooth texture can make it difficult for some babies to accept lumpier foods later on. Babies can get stuck on purees. Most parents now adhere to the 6-month guideline for starting solids, and if starting on purees, tend to offer these for a couple of months before moving on to finger foods. A small proportion of these babies will get stuck on purees and find the transition harder. It appears they missed the opportunity to learn to chew and handle multiple textures in their early weaning experiences and are now less open to doing so. Babies can develop a preference for sweet foods. Research from the University of Glasgow in 2013 found that 65% of commercial baby foods were sweet offerings. Babies' taste preferences are developing in these months, and it's important to offer them foods from a variety of taste sensations. If you do choose to offer your babies purees, it's important to follow certain guidelines. Don't try to encourage higher food intake. This means watching your baby for cues and signs that they would like to end the meal and respecting these cues. Don't use distraction to encourage eating. We want to encourage healthy eating habits in our babies, and using distraction like "here comes the aeroplane" games or television can interfere with a healthy relationship with food. Offer homemade purees where possible. In general, we want to avoid exposing our babies to too much ultra-processed food, which includes most commercial baby foods. An 80-20 ratio attitude to homemade versus commercial is often a realistic target. If 80% of their intake is fresh, homemade food, then likely 20% processed foods will be okay. Introduce texture to purees as soon as possible in order to prevent future issues and to encourage your baby's learning journey with chewing and swallowing. Try to keep some texture in your purees and move to lumpy purees as soon as feels feasible. So, to recap, purees have become a cultural norm for starting solids, but they are not necessary for babies. Babies should be at least 6 months old and meet physical and physiological milestones before being ready for solids. Homemade purees are better than processed ones because they have more nutrition, protein, and a better texture. However, babies can get stuck on purees and develop a preference for sweet foods. If using purees, parents should follow certain guidelines, including not encouraging higher food intake, avoiding distraction, offering homemade where possible, and introducing texture as soon as feasible.